من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين شفيع ذنوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا وحبيب قلوبنا أبي القاسم محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين وأصحابه المنتجبين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي أما بعد السلام عليكم جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. So we stated that the Prophet of Islam introduced Allah in the lives of human beings in a very meaningful way, in a very intimate way. He said to them, no matter what you were before this day, when you find your God, this is the beginning of the true life. And he came with utmost compassion, and this is actually in keeping with human nature. They were people who had committed a lot of wrong. They were guilty of moral vices. These people were criminals. Instead of introducing a notion of punishment, what he said to them was, if you turn to Allah meaningfully within yourselves, if you make Allah the helm of your existence and the center of your universe, then the first thing, be assured, is that Allah wipes clean the slate of your sins. Have a fresh start and a fresh beginning. When you tell this to people, they feel encouraged. They feel a sense of innocent belonging with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Let us talk about this point just for a moment as we advance into today's talk. Mahmud Shabastari has said, the great Sufi, that tawbah in itself becomes the greatest sin and veil from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When a criminal cannot lose the thought of their crimes, and as a result they lose their confidence to approach their God, at that point God is displeased with them. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling them, have I not told you that I will forgive every one of your sins? Have I not said to you that I will convert every one of your evil deeds into good deeds? Then why do you not open your souls and come before me? Be confident in front of me. I am yours, you are mine. If your sins do not leave your mind, then your tawbah is the greatest sin in itself. At that point, throw away tawbah altogether. Arrive at the threshold of God like an innocent child, one free of all sins. This is what the Prophet taught his people, that you are freed of all sins. Start again. Begin your lives afresh. Amongst these were people who had buried 6 daughters, those that had killed all life long, those that had cheated others, those who were merciless. These are the monsters in front of the Prophet of Allah. If I can express this in different terms, today, me and you condemn ISIS to the pits of hell, don't we? This is cancer on the face of earth. Whether it comes in the form of Sunni Islam or Shia Islam, Christianity, Hinduism, whatever. This is a movement away from godliness. It is a motion towards the demonic self. The Prophet of God came to such people, and out of these monsters he made fine man. By beautifully introducing Allah into their lives. He said, look, Allah has forgiven whatever has gone before. Start afresh. He did not wait, unlike Moses. When Moses approached the promised land, and he said to his people, go in and take it. And they said, nay, inna fiha qawman jabbarin. There are people, gigantic people, ruthless men in there. Moses said, be lost within the wilderness. And Allah said, I make it haram for them for 40 years, until a whole generation changed. And a new generation came, and they took the promised land. All of the sins of their forefathers and their fathers were washed from their system. The Prophet did not wait for the new generation. He converted those very people. He transformed their monstrosity into angelic, beautiful qualities. So he introduces Allah in a very beautiful way. He says to them, it is never too late to start afresh. Tend to Allah. Make Allah the helm of your existence, the center of your universe. Be innocent in front of Allah, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will accept you as you are and provide you with utmost growth. So here he introduces Allah. In addition to that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala becomes a point of simplicity for them, a principle of simplicity. The complexities that existed in their minds were now dissolved. Everything that occupied them, that ruined the journey of their life, was now put to one side. Their lives were simplified. They began to breathe like free men who are no longer restrained, people who are no longer in cages. If somebody says to me, Arif, you're a free man, I laugh at myself. I say, I am the biggest slave. I find no freedom. Even if you were to take me to another galaxy, Arif will still be within his petty little world that he has conjured up in his mind. He will still be worried about his tomorrow and what people think about him. He will still be worried about his enemies and his friends. He will still be worried about validation. This is a slave. Somebody tells this free man that he is the biggest slave of them all. Or as Rumi says, O you who curse Shimar and laments Hussain, lament your own self and curse your own self. Your own Shimar is killing your own Hussain. What he did was, he introduced Allah in such a beautiful way. And he said, look, God is a point of simplicity. Put away all your worries. Liberate yourselves. Lead a life that is meaningful, not a life in which you are constantly preoccupied. Leave everything aside. Together with this, he brings a beautiful message. He says that God, the one that you are turning to, is your God. He does not require all these lengthy formalities. Call him and he is yours. The traditions that they used to have, the superstitions that they used to have, knew no end. They would wear ihram and enter their houses from the back door, thinking that this was gesture of piety. Allah said, there is no piety in entering your houses from the back. If your hearts are clean, then enter your houses from the front door. God does not need such distracting gestures. All of these are cages imposed upon the mind, restrictions. So he imposes God in a very meaningful way. He is a principle of simplicity. God accepts you as you are, in your limitations, in your frailties, in your weaknesses. Be confident with God. You do not need arduous exercises to go to Allah. Allah is there for you whenever you want Him. Then, going onwards, what He does is, He says, well, your God has a certain meaning for you in this life. If a mother is raising her children, then that act is most preferred by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He brings Allah to earth in those mundane little acts. You don't need to climb the Himalayas. You don't need to pray 100 rakat namaz. You don't need to remain hungry and thirsty for months on end. Your Lord is with you in the simple things that you do. So they asked the Prophet, how do we get paradise? The Prophet said, they said to the Prophet, how can the adab of qabr be averted? You know what the Prophet said? He said, clean the mosque and Allah will expand your grave. They said, Prophet, how will we get paradise? The Prophet said, smile at each other for the sake of Allah and Allah will give you paradise. They said, oh Prophet, how will we get light into our graves? The Prophet said, go and light up the house of God and God will light up your house. How simple He makes everything. He says then that God is with you and this God encourages you to bring out the best in you. And this God is with you in the smallest thing that you do. If you are breathing air, then make that breath for Allah. That breath becomes a blessed breath. If you're giving a penny in the way of Allah, Give that penny meaningfully, knowing full well that it is not you who is giving it. It is Allah providing through you. Then after the act of charity, thank Allah that Allah has been charitable on you, to you. He changes everything. Makes God very accessible, very, very simple. Makes life in its mundane capacity a very meaningful life. A woman tore the bread in half, fed her children. The Prophet smiled. Then she saw that they were still hungry. She fed them the rest, and the Prophet had tears in his eyes, and he said, Allah will give you paradise. A man came once. He was a farmer. The Prophet of Allah looked at him. He went to him. Listen to this carefully. He lifted his hand, and he saw that they were roughened. The skin was rough through tilling the land. He kissed his hand. He had tears in his eyes. And he said, by Allah, Allah will never burn these hands. He made life meaningful for them. He introduces Allah at that mundane level of life, and life suddenly takes on a new meaning for these people altogether. With this then, he starts directing them, starts instilling confidence within them. He says to them, your Allah says that this world is yours. He has created the heavens and the earth, the seas, the mountains, the animals, all of them are for you. Seek of His pleasures, explore the land, take whatever you can, but remember Allah in all of these things. What happened was, he started breaking their intellectual idols. The same people who used to worship the night and the day, the same people who used to worship the mighty oceans, Muhammad Rasulullah tells them through the Quran that these mighty oceans are subservient to you. You do not worship them, they worship you. Imagine how he liberates them and he frees their minds. The night and day are mechanistic events. You have nothing to do with them. They will keep on happening. You praise Allah through them. When he liberates them, the same people who used to worship Lat and Uzza and were so superstitious, who would give sadaqah at every point of their lives. You know about the Arabs, if you read about them, whenever they did something, they would give sadaqah. Their sadaqah was, they would make an idol and give an offering to the idol, in order for the idol to procure good for them and repel evil from them. When the Prophet instilled confidence in them, this notion of sadaqah giving through insecurity left their souls for once and for all. The Prophet taught them, say, as-sakhiru billah, I seek the best from Allah, and I trust that whatever happens will be the best. So if I go on a business expedition, if I lose all my wealth, because I sought best from Allah, Allah has given me this loss, and this loss is the greatest gain for me. He liberates them from their insecurities fully, sets them on the path of progression and evolution. Here is now what I want to say. The Prophet realized fully that the human beings only have one trend, and that one trend is for them to grow, for them to explore, for them to conquer, for them to come to the fullness of their existence. And that is why the theology that they need is a theology that increases and encourages this growth process. You can't restrain people. The problem of Islam today is that our natural tendency is to grow, but our Islam is restrictive. I'll give an example. In terms of the coming of Mahdi Salamullah alayhi, we are told in our text that when he comes, it will be the bleakest of all times. There will be nothing to look forward to. People will be killing each other, and then he will come and do away with injustice and kill all the wrongdoers and give the land to the good doers. I ask you one simple question. For a people who are looking towards that life as a goal, how can they be encouraged to come to the fullness of their existence at present, when the future is so bleak, when it's so black, when it's so dark, when it's so hopeless, and when it's so pessimistic? If you instill pessimism within the minds of little children in madrasa, how do you expect them to become the best of humanitarians? Best humanitarians. How do you expect them to become explorers?
When your fiqh says to you that you can't be in a capacity, when you can't do ruku and sajda and wudu, how will they ever become space explorers? Will they ever want to go into space where they can't do ruku and sujood? There is no moon and there is no sun. So on the one hand, the human tendency, nature wants to burst forth. It wants to explore. And on the other hand, the religion restricts it. What the Prophet did was, he gave them a theology that would increase that tendency within them, which is naturally with them. In other words, the theology that the Prophet gave them was in sync with their nature. He says to them, say, La ilah, there is no God, and that is your fundamental primary nature. There is no restraining you or human being. You are created in the image of God. You are as defiant as your God. Do you not see your great-grandfather Adam? He was told not to approach the tree. He ran to the tree and curled the fruit from it. This is your nature. You are meant to break every limit. You are not supposed to be restrained. La ilah, there is no God. Deny every limitation and go forth. He gave them this theology. He encouraged them. He said, there is no limiting you. You are the image of God on the face of this earth. The earth is yours. Take it. No wonder within 23 years, he brings about such a phenomenal revolution that nomadic type of people, immoral to the core, become the champion of humanity. Become the best scientists, the best explorers, the greatest humanitarians, moral, fine human beings. Because he gave them that theology. That theology that encouraged them to question, to break limits, to go forward. And at every step, guess what? He said to them, Allah commends you for this progression that you are making. Somebody asked me, what is the greater achievement, the Eiffel Towers or the Himalayas? I said, the Eiffel Towers. They thought I was mad. I said, listen to me. The Himalaya Allah made through a volcanic eruption. The Eiffel Tower Allah made through the brain of a human being. And therefore the Eiffel Tower is far greater than the Himalayas. It is Allah's work that is being done, the Prophet taught us. So he gave them this theology, a liberating theology. Now if you look at our trend, our human trend, it has always been one of wanting to liberate. Human being thrives under challenges. By God, even if there weren't any challenges, we would create challenges in order to bring the best out in us. This is our godly nature. Never be hopeless on the ability of human beings. If this earth were to die, by God, we will go and inhabit one of the other planets out there. And we will make a new home. This is how we are. By God, if the time comes, we will try and escape Qiyamah itself. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be pleased with that if we can escape Qiyamah altogether. And Allah will take great pride in what He has created. This is a sort of theology that the Prophet gives them. And he encourages them to move forward, to break their shackles. Now how did he break the shackles? In a variety of ways. First and foremost, the illusionary superstitions he put to one side. Then the intellectual limitations that they had. He said, you have no intellectual limitation. Go forward, achieve whatever you can. And the reason that the Muslims were the people who transmitted the knowledge of Greece to Islam was because of this encouragement of the Prophet, when he said to them that whatever mankind has to offer is from God and it belongs to you. But look at today's Muslim. I remember when the Muslim Parliament was formed in the UK, and I'm just wondering, why do you need a Muslim Parliament anyway? It's probably the worst of all parliaments. When the Muslim Parliament was formed, and I used to see their statements, I was a very young teenager at that time, and I saw them that their only job was to react at whatever was coming from the West. The Muslims today are so insecure that they have become nothing but reactionaries. We have got something better than they have. I'll say, what? What do you have that is better than what they have? Do you have a better social system? Do you give rights to minorities in your country? At least in the UK, I can say I am the lover of Ali ibn Abi Talib and the sons of Ali ibn Abi Talib, and they honor me for that. I can have interfaith gatherings. Oh Muslim, in your countries, Do you allow even other Muslims to practice Islam in accordance with their faith dictates? What do you have anyway to be proud of? Have you created the United Nations? Did you draft up the Charter of Human Rights? Are you talking about international law, courts of justice? All of these things have been done by those that you are saying are wrong. How many medics have you produced? How many scientists have you produced? How many humanitarians have you produced? How many philosophers have you produced? You have achieved zero. And whenever anybody else achieves anything, you say we have better than them. Or the classical one is, oh, but the Quran already had this. This is the thing we always say, right? When it was found out that the earth is not the center of the universe, and it goes, Quran already had it. So I said, well, why didn't you read it? 1,400 years, why didn't you read the Quran? Somebody without reading the Quran has achieved this. You had the Quran. Aren't you supposed to slap your face and beat your head at your own state? Aren't you supposed to lament at your own state? The Prophet was different. He said, look, when they said to him, there are great men by the name of Plato and Aristotle, you know what the Prophet said? He said, they were prophets, learn from them. Somebody came from Greece. He said, we have heard of Aristotle, Socrates and Plato. The Prophet of Islam said, they were prophets of God. Get their learnings and learn from them. He wasn't insecure. He opened up their minds. He liberated them intellectually. Today, the Western world owes its philosophical advancement and its emergence from the Dark Ages to the Muslims transmitting the Greek sciences to them through Arabic language and advancing them, the likes of Farabi and Ibn Sina. Those were the things the Prophet of Islam gave to these people. He liberated them intellectually. He liberated them in their minds, in their souls, made them fine moral human beings. But the other thing that the Blessed Prophet understood, and it's a key to our success that we have not understood, is that he introduces his Islam in the most minimalistic manner. If you read the Quran, tell me, how much of the laws does this Quran have? It's minimalistic. It's got morality in there. It's got theology in there. It's got a sense of purpose in there. But it's filled with minimal principles for human existence. It's not bothered about hard and fast laws. Why? Because this is something that cannot be fixed. It is something that will always be changing as humanity progresses. The modes of society, the way in which we interact, transactions, international relations, everything changes. A notion of human rights, the rights of men and women, the roles of each other, the way people marry, everything changes with the changing of society. And deliberately, the Prophet gave a minimalistic Islam and left the rest of it on the human beings. That these are the broad principles, the principles of justice and righteousness. Now you evolve. You know, when people say that Islam has no monarchy in there, I will say this is pure nonsense. Which Islam doesn't have monarchy in there? Sulaiman was a monarch, was a king. Islam doesn't have feudalism in there. Why not? Islam doesn't have communism in there, doesn't have capitalism in there. None of these things are true. I ask my Muslim audience on many occasions, you are saying that Muslims have the best economic system. Find me a surah in the Quran that talks about the economy of Islam. You won't find it. Find me a surah that talks about the sociology of Islam. You won't find it. Find me a surah that talks about the politics of Islam. You're not going to find it. Find me a surah that talks about human rights. You're not going to find it. Islam was not meant to give these things. These things are always changing. It's the principles that never change. The Prophet taught those principles, that you are supposed to evolve. That is your natural facet. You are supposed to grow. What I will do is, I will encourage you to do this. Within the broad principles and broad framework, I set you free and liberate you and go as far as you can. As a result, they took the learning of the Greeks, the Persians, they made use of it and they grew. Today, the Americans have got something right that the rest of the world has got wrong. The American culture is very broad. It's not defined. Anybody and anyone can come into American culture and redefine it according to their broad principles and make it into a more glorious culture. This is what Islam had. It did not have a defined culture. people would enter with their learning and define it and redefine it again. There is no such thing as Islamic transactions. The only thing Islamic is fair play in transactions. That's all that is there in Islam. Otherwise, you can have every type of transaction. It doesn't matter to Islam. Islam does not have an economic system. All it has is a fair economy. Whatever constitutes for a fair economy is something that you people will make by yourselves. It's a wholly defeatist idea to say that the Mahdi will come and give us a fair economy. How can Mahdi come and impose something to unripened minds that don't understand anything? You can't, can you? How can a professor come and teach a class of kindergarten babies? It's not possible. We have to graduate before he comes. What Prophet did was, he gave minimalistic Islam. And he said, in this minimalistic Islam are principles. You evolve. Whatever you do is as sacred as whatever God is saying. But when it doesn't work, then no, there is no sacredness about it. Throw it away, change it. Why get stuck with cultures? This is the problem with modern Islam, isn't it? We can't change anything because it's all come and packaged in the name of Islam, and everything acquires sanctity and holiness. But this is what the great Sheikh Tusi understood in his time, faced by his challenges. It's not relevant for me today. How beautiful is this Islam? By giving its minimalistic principles, and the rest of it leaves to humanity. Now tell me, the Western world that we curse so much, truly, has it done so badly? Growing from feudalism to capitalism that it has right now. Okay, fine, it's being tweaked again and retweaked. It's being changed and rechanged. But has it done so badly? It has a beautiful welfare system. Is that so wrong? It has a socially beneficial system of interest. Is it so wrong? Look at how much good they are doing to the world. They have moral values. They have human values. Person like me can go into parliament and become the Prime Minister of UK. Is it so wrong? Has the system been so wrong? It allows a Sikh and a Hindu and a Muslim to coexist harmoniously on one street. They can transact with each other in all fairness and all goodness, and all of them benefit and grow together. And at the end of the day, all three of them are supporting humanitarian causes together. It also allows us to build centers of worship where we do not discriminate between one religion and another. Everyone can come and pray together. Has it done so badly? Isn't that the cry of humanity, the cry of godliness within us? That is where we should arrive? How can religion ever restrict this godliness that is within us? Religion is supposed to be minimalistic and allow that godliness to express itself to the fullest extent. Does it really make sense to anybody that Islam says, do not let them build their churches in Muslim lands? Seriously? And West allows the Muslims to build mosques, to buy churches and convert them into mosques, and in fact gives them grants on top of it and helps them? Who is better of the two? The one who are allowing the flow of godliness, or the others who are so insecure and restricting it? This is not the Islam of the Prophet. Now when we go back to the Prophet, that covenant that he made with the monk, in that he writes, he put his palm on it, yes? He didn't sign it, the whole palm. In that it is written that nobody will force conversion of the Christians to Muslims. None of their churches will be broken. If they want to make churches, you will help them. When you marry their women, they will not be forced to convert into Muslims. This is what the Prophet taught. And this is what the Muslims are doing. So the secret of the Prophet was, he introduced a minimalistic Islam. He says these are minimalistic principles of righteous living and growth. In that evolve. Our evolution naturally wants us to harmoniously coexist. Our evolution wants us to support a church, to help a church, so that through that church, Allah's name can be pronounced. I know this is dangerous for me to say, but I'll say it nonetheless. Having full faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there was a Muslim priest who had become a Christian, and he became a Christian priest. And then he said that his sole task was to go to Bradford, an area within United Kingdom, and convert the Pakistani youths into Christian. So obviously the Muslims wrote to me. They said, look, we've got to stop him. We've got to counter him. I said, no, I need to write to him, commend him and help him. And say, look, these youths who are thieves, drug addicts, thugs, if you can make them into Christians and into better human beings, thank you very much. You have made them into better Muslims. I will help you do this. Doesn't our humanity and godliness within us ask us to bring about the best that we have? Islam is minimalistic. It does not have all these constraints. It does not have all these laws. It does not have all these restrictions. These are alien to Islam. Nothing to do with Islam. Then the other beauty that the Prophet realized was that human mind needs to interpret and reinterpret things all the time. So what he did was, he left a code of law which was very ambiguous. I need to explain this. He left it very ambiguous purposefully, deliberately. There was a purpose in there. Because he sees that the essence of devotion to Allah is what matters. The form is secondary. The form can change. So now, when you look at the verse of the Quran, and I'm just giving a mundane example. If you look at wudu, it just says wash until your elbows. It doesn't say the direction. If Allah can deliberately leave it ambiguous, what does it mean? That doesn't really matter to Allah which direction you wash in. It doesn't really matter. What matters to Allah is something else. When Ali ibn Abi Talib was asked, how do I know that my namaz is accepted? He did not say the one with proper wudu going from top to bottom. He didn't say that. What did he say? He recited the verse of the Quran. He said, prayer takes you away from evil and indecencies. If after you pray and you find yourself a better person in your heart, then your prayer has been accepted. Do you know this? What good is that wudu and that sajda and that ruku after which there is no Allah to be found? Isn't that prayer better, which is done for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even if the wudu is not in accordance with the way I understand it? But my point here is that the Prophet knew this tendency of the human community to interpret, reinterpret the plurality, and he wanted to cater for this plurality in his Islam. That's the most beautiful thing about the Prophet's Islam, that it allowed for plurality. It allowed for arms being folded like this, and allowed for arms being opened like this. The Quran says nothing about the folding of the arms, does it? The Quran is silent. It just says Aqimus Salah. And see the Prophet and pray like the way he is praying. It was as simple as that. So he understood that by tomorrow there will be a Sunni and a Shia and a Bora and an Ismaili and a Salafi and a Wahhabi, whatever else. He knew you will get all of these varieties. But his aim was that in all of these varieties, feel free, worship Allah, and make this variety a means of godliness and coming together in line with your human ethos and human condition and godliness. He did not want to make Islam so rigid that through these forms we start killing each other. We start cursing each other. He deliberately left it that way because no two human beings understand the same thing in the same way. We all understand things in a very different way. A mother has several children. They will all do the same thing in different ways. Yet they are bonded as one family. Yet their mother appreciates them all. But if one of the children were to curse and condemn the rest of them, then the mother will be angry with that child only. Yes? So the facets of the Islam of the Prophet was liberating. He actually liberated the human mind. He said, look, take good wherever you find it. It's yours. Evolve. Make your own systems. Break them. There is no sacredness in any of them. So long as godliness prevails, so long as you're becoming godly creatures, do whatever you want. He said, this law of mine, interpret and reinterpret it as in you how you want, provided it makes you godly, provided it increases harmony between you. All of it is valid. You know, when people say that this is not valid and this is valid, I will ask them to read our Imam Sadiq Salamullah alayh. Just read him. The biggest madloom within the community of this community is Imam Sadiq. He has not been understood at all. Do you know this? When they came to him with Eid and they said, when is Eid and when is this? He said, look, do Eid with the people of Qibla, do Eid with the people of Namaz, do Eid with the people of La ilaha illallah. Don't ask me about the moon. He was so casual about it. On another occasion, somebody came from Sham to the Imam. He said, which fast is it? It's the fourth fast. He said, but no, I saw the moon and it's our fifth fast. Imam smiled. He said, okay, I'll do one qada at the end. What difference does it make? It's not the end of the world. Somebody was sitting there and his garment had blood and he was praying. Imam said, go and wash it. He washed it. Imam said, now resume your prayer. He didn't say your namaz is broken and start doing takbir again. No. He said your namaz is an internal act. That form of ruku and sajda is secondary. Try and do it as best as possible. But the real thing is the internal thing, not the external thing. We have become so fixated that our Islam is a means of disunity. The Prophet left principles in which plurality could exist in beautiful harmony. And that is why people loved it so much. Each of the Sahaba said, yes, I've understood this and I'm doing this, and the other one did not judge him. They said, that's fine, I understood it this way and I'm going to do this. And at the same time they were a collective body. That was the beauty of the Islam of the Prophet, that it allowed plurality. Plurality in the ambit of godliness. So long as you're godly, so long as it promotes growth, so long as it promotes harmony, I don't mind how you evolve and how you interpret the system that I'm giving to you. This is the free hand Muhammad Rasulullah gave to the community. The success of the Western world was what? When they finally buried their theology. It's a shame that I have to say this. Their theology was restrictive. With enlightenment, when they buried their theology, they started evolving in their humanity and technology. Islam actually came with a liberating theology, with a liberating notion of God. And this is what the Muslims need to remind themselves of. If we go to these great people of ours, and I'm going to finish now as my time is finishing. In the battle of Siffin, you'll be surprised. The people who fought and supported Ali ibn Abi Talib, fought alongside Ali Salamullah alayhi and supported him, they prayed with their arms folded. And many of the people who supported Muawiyah and fought against Ali ibn Abi Talib Salamullah alayhi prayed with their arms open. Do you know this? They had no problem with these things. They had zero problem with these things. These things came about afterwards. They were nothing to do with early Islam. Those were political strives. They weren't not based on theology per se. But these great men were of that understanding, that these things did not bother them. Then you come to Hussain ibn Ali, Salamullah alayhi. Look at the people in his Karbala that are with him. There is a Christian with him. There is a slave with him. There is a free man with him. There are women with him. There are men with him. There are people who pray with folded arms. There are people who pray with open arms. He is not concerned with any of these things. His Islam was one which was quite beyond all of it. What I'm trying to say here is that we have a precedent. If anybody is getting agitated with what I'm saying look back at the era of Ali ibn Abi Talib. Look at the era of Al-Hassan al-Hussain. You will see that what I'm saying prevailed at that point. And if these people were happy with it, then who are me and you to say otherwise? I finish now, but the Muslim mind needs to be unshackled. It needs to be liberated. It needs to be given confidence that there is no such thing as Islam that is complete. There is no such thing. So when West does something, you can't say I'm shunning it because it's not Islam, and Islam has better than it. Islam doesn't have anything better. Islam is a product of human achievement. That is Islam. Nothing else. So when you tell me our philosophy, I will say this is nonsense. Philosophy is human philosophy. When you say to me our economics, I will say this is nonsense. Economy is our economy, human economy. When you say our banking system, I will say this is nonsense. Banking system is a human banking system on the principles of fairness and justice and righteousness and productivity. When you say to me our politics, I will say nonsense. There is no such thing as our politics. It is only human politics that governs in line with human principles. The Muslim mind needs to understand this once again, so that it can be liberated. It can begin to flow and begin to grow. This is my punchline for today. Now that I'm going to finish, I've been promising I'll finish, but I haven't, but now I will. I said this last night. You see, look, when I was a teenager, when we used to fast 20 hours and 21 hours, because obviously I was the extra pious one. My namazes used to be half hour long, so my fast used to be 21 hours, genuinely 21 hours, yes? We used to hear the hadith that when the 12th Imam comes, people will see each other in the palm of their hands. And I used to think, what a grand miracle the 12th Imam will bring. This is the backward thinking of the Muslim. Yeah? I fail to understand that this is a technological achievement of the time when the 12th Imam comes. This hadith has been with me, if not for 1,300 years, then at least from the time in which it has been recorded 500 years ago. Imagine if Muslim minds could think accurately and they saw a hadith like this, they would have known that technologically something like this is possible, and they would have achieved it 200 years ago. Imagine how far the Muslims would have been by today if they had the accurate thinking, if their minds were liberated and unchained. We have the Quran, but we just don't want to read it in the way it's supposed to be read. Our recitation of the Quran is what? Tajweed. And in the month of Ramadan, that's about it. No wonder the Prophet says on the day of Qiyamah, oh God, these my people abandon this book of yours. That's what the Prophet says, right, in the Quran? The bottom line is, the Prophet knew very well that there is a progressive trend, and he brought a theology that is liberating and gave minimalistic Islam so that people could evolve, form and reform. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Sorry, I'll take questions from yesterday.
Questions?
Sorry. Yes. Okay, this question says, when I submit to my Lord as I am, I reach to the point of relief. The question is, how do I recognize the relief, or how do I realize I am on the path that will liberate me? You don't have to make haste in this. You don't have to make haste. When you say to your Lord, this is me, O Lord, and I come to you, yes? That act in itself is the first step towards the greatest liberation. But if you're looking for that euphoric feeling from inside, don't look for it. Things happen gradually within us, yes? So if you can do this, be yourself in front of your God, then that is the path of liberation. So it says, explore the land and the space, and the newer sci-fi movies show how to access the space by making the 3-dimension into 6-dimension. Are there any support from our Imams how to achieve this quantum leap? To be honest with you, there are. In Armaru Nu'maniya, there are hadiths from Ali ibn Abi Talib that talk of things that are so ambiguous. He talks about people communicating by lights. The whole book dedicated to Imam Sadiq on his utterances, or Biharul Anwar, the chapter on Imam Sadiq Salamullah alayh, and the ahadith that Imam Sadiq provides of how the futuristic world would be, how the cosmology is. They have a lot of insights. Obviously, a mind like mine cannot access it. It needs a trained mind to read those verses, those hadiths, to find access and deeper meaning there. But yes, there may be a lot of this material in the ahadith book, because Imam Ali has said you can simultaneously coexist in different parallel universes. Maybe that is pointing at something like that. Or the hadith that talk about the quantum teleportation, that you can transport yourself through thought from one place to another. Now in a three-dimensional world we have to cross things, right? But if we can warp space, then we can be in two places simultaneously. If those are the sort of ahadith that makes sense, then yes, we do have those ahadiths. God mentions punishment and hell, fire everywhere in the Quran. Prophet speaks of a forgiving God. I'm confused, please elaborate. You see, think about it this way. Hopefully, if Allah so wishes, we can meet once again and we can talk about hell and heaven. But in the hadith of Imam Sadiq, we find that human has two sides, the side of hell and the side of heaven. And it appears from reading the verses of the Quran that the human being is the author of the hell and author of heaven. Now that does not mean that there is no place like hell or there is no place like heaven. It's like we are sitting here in Masjid Najaf. There is a place like Masjid Najaf, yes? But I am looking at you from this angle and you are looking at me from that angle. Our perspective of the same place is different. I can't show you the colors that I see. You can't show me the colors that you see. I can't actually give you access to my mind to see the shapes that I see, and you can't do the same either. So we are in the same place and we are all in different places. Now let's take it forward a little bit more. One of you really loves my talk, so you don't find the time passing. The other one is getting thoroughly bored, which is actually nobody here, and can't understand why 5 minutes feel like 5 hours. So we are in the same place, yet we are in different places. Now one of the people here is the one who built this mosque. Another one is the one who has prayed namaz janazah on his father in this mosque. A third one is somebody is from a different sect and thinking, what are these Shias going to do to me after the lecture finishes? All of these people are in the same place and yet they are in very different places. In the same way, paradise and hell are places, but we also make them through our individual perspective. Nobody has the same paradise, nobody has the same hell. Now the verse of the Quran says, fear hell, whose fuel is man and stone. So when Harun Rashid mockingly asked Bahlul, where have you come from? He said, from the fire of hell, from hell. He said, was it hot? He said, no, there was no fire. He said, why? He said, I asked the same thing from the keeper of hell. Why is there no fire? He said, hell doesn't have any fire. He said, well, what about all the verses? He said, oh, you will bring your own fire with you. The fire, the real fire, is the one that human being will create for himself. The real paradise is what the human being creates for himself. And the verses of the Quran that talk about hell again and again and again is the destruction and damnation that the human being is bringing upon his own self. Yes? Imagine, nobody knows what can frighten me more than me myself. Nobody knows what can give me pleasure more than me myself. I am the author of hell. I will author the unforgiving inferno myself. Yes? Allah says in the Quran, this is what you have earned. This is what you have sent forward. This is what you have done. I haven't done this. You have done this. So the Prophet again and again is pointing at a fire that is being kindled by me and you. It's not being kindled by God. The role of God is to put out the fire, and that's why He's forgiving. But me and you rekindle it. So when we say, oh Allah, put out the fire, He tells us, stop lighting it. Yes? So yes, there is a dreadful hell, but that hell is something that we will make ourselves. Please explain the existence of, does it say Taraweeh? What happened was that the Prophet used to pray his own nightly devotion. So people went and congregated behind him. So he went inside his house. Next day he started doing the same thing. People went and started praying behind him, so he went into his own house. and he left the people. Then the people formed congregation and they started praying Taraweeh. In the Khilaf of Imam Ali, they said to him, lead us in Taraweeh. Imam said, look, I don't believe in it. The Prophet did not pray it in congregation. They said, but we want an Imam. So Imam Ali sent one of the Prophet's Sahaba and his own Sahaba to lead them in Taraweeh. Yes? Now I ask the Shias this. If it was so wrong, why would Ali ibn Abi Talib send his representative to lead these people in Taraweeh? Why would he do that? If it was so wrong. Imam Ali said, I will not do it because the Prophet did not do it. That's my choice. It's best practice that you do it individually. But if you want to do it in Jamaat, I will not lead you. Here's the Sahabi of the Prophet who will lead for you on my behalf. Yes? Now tell me, if they pray Taraweeh, who are they praying to? Allah. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam invited the Christians inside his mosque. It was time for their prayers. Yes? They said, we will go out of your mosque and pray to our God. Prophet Muhammad said, pray inside the mosque. It's the same God. Are you telling me the God who allows Christians to pray inside his mosque and accepts their prayer does not accept the prayer of Muslims who devote to him genuinely and sincerely? This is the restricted minds that we have. If they're doing ruku, they're doing it for Allah. If they're doing sujood, they're doing it for Allah. If they're praying Quran, it's the word of Allah. And if they become better people, then me and you should be praying the same thing. I know you guys are not going to take this kindly at all. Can we recite Fatiha for all of our marhumin?